On December 16, 2016, at 2:28 p.m., dispatchers in Maricopa, Arizona received a 911 call that didn't sound like a typical emergency. The caller wasn't even in the same state. He was on the phone with a relative when he heard something terrifying. 3 loud booms that didn't sound like a door slamming or construction noise. It sounded like gunshots. The caller explained that his aunt had been on the line with his cousin, Michael Ager, when the sounds hit. The line went silent. The family panicked. They didn't know if Michael was hurt, if someone was still inside the house, or if it was happening again. Their only move was to call police immediately. Officers rushed to Michael's home, and by the time they arrived, neighbors were already outside, shaken and confused, looking toward the open garage like they didn't want to believe what they were seeing. The garage door was up. A gray car sat inside, as if someone had just pulled in and hadn't even had time to breathe. That detail mattered, because it meant whatever happened fast. As officers approached the vehicle, their concern escalated. They didn't know if the driver was injured, unconscious, or if the shooter could still be nearby. One officer leaned in and saw a man slumped over inside. He wasn't responding. They tried to keep him alert. They tried to assess what could be done. But within moments, it became clear this was not a situation where help could change the outcome. Michael Ager, 31 years old, was dead. While one group secured the garage and the car, another team moved through the house with extreme caution. Weapons drawn, they cleared rooms one by one. Their fear wasn't only for the victim. They had to consider the worst. Could there be a second victim inside? Could the suspect still be waiting? Could this be a trap? The house was empty. No suspect. No sign of anyone hiding. That silence is always the most unsettling part of these scenes. When the danger is no longer visible, it doesn't feel like it's gone. It feels like it's moved. A supervising investigator, Sergeant Michael Dennison, arrived and began working the scene like a puzzle. The first priority was identifying the victim formally and understanding the timeline. A wallet and ID confirmed the victim, Michael Ager. Then another detail surfaced. Michael had been on a phone call when he was attacked. He had pulled into his garage while speaking with his sister, Marley. That meant the shooting occurred within seconds of him arriving home, before he could sense any threat or react. Investigators studied the car and the garage. They found evidence suggesting the shots came from behind the vehicle. The back window showed damage consistent with gunfire. Shell casings were recovered. And outside, near the area between homes, there was a muddy footprint, small but important. It suggested movement, a route, a hurried escape. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, hoping for clear witness accounts. But what they got at first was confusion. Some neighbors thought they saw a man. Others insisted it could have been a woman. The suspect was dressed in dark clothing, and in the chaos, the human brain fills gaps with guesses. Height, race, and details didn't match from one witness to the next. Then one neighbor gave the first truly useful lead. She explained she heard 3 sharp pops, looked outside, and saw a newer model white van speeding away. What stood out most was that a sliding door appeared open as it moved off like someone had jumped in quickly. That single detail changed the direction of the entire case. Investigators immediately looked for security cameras. Michael's home had a camera facing the driveway and street. Officers pulled the footage and watched closely. What they saw made everything click. A figure ran toward Michael's garage, stepped into a puddle area between homes, disappeared from view for only a few seconds, then sprinted back the same way, stepping into the puddle again before getting into a white minivan and driving away. The muddy footprint at the scene suddenly had meaning. It wasn't random mud. It was a trace of the killer's path. 2 women were inside, confused and cooperative, and their information didn't match the situation. The stop ended with them being released. It was a reminder of how difficult these searches can be. When your only description is white van, you're chasing a shadow that could belong to anyone. So detectives returned to what they trusted most: evidence. They enhanced the camera footage and focused on the minivan itself. Eventually, they were able to get the license plate. That was the breakthrough. The plate traced back to a registered owner, a woman named Michelle. When investigators contacted Michelle, her reaction was immediate denial. She had no reason to be in Maricopa. She insisted she hadn't driven there. Detectives pushed back. They told her the van had been seen on video near a homicide scene. The distance from where she lived made it even more unbelievable. This wasn't a wrong turn. This was a deliberate trip. Michelle was stunned. Then she said something that instantly turned the case into something personal. She brought up a coworker. Her coworker's name was Catherine Sinkovich. And Catherine, she explained, had a connection to Maricopa. Even more chilling, Catherine was reportedly Michael Ager's ex-girlfriend. At that moment, the investigation shifted from unknown suspect to a targeted possibility, someone close to the victim. Detectives dug into Michael and Catherine's history. They tracked down a former roommate, Chris, who described a relationship filled with conflict and alarming behavior. He spoke about violent incidents during the relationship and the aftermath of the breakup. He described how messy it became, how unstable it felt, and how Michael had taken steps to protect himself. Then came another crucial factor, a child. Catherine had given birth not long before the murder, and there was a legal dispute about paternity. Michael had been taking legal steps to establish whether he was the father, and Catherine reportedly denied it, forcing a DNA test. Investigators discovered a detail that made the timing feel almost impossible to ignore. The day Michael was shot was the same day he returned after providing the DNA sample. To detectives, it looked like a motive was forming, not speculation, not rumors, but a timeline that raised serious questions. Now they needed proof that Catherine had access to Michelle's van that day. So police went to Catherine's workplace and requested surveillance footage. That's when the case turned from suspicious to damning. The video showed Michelle sitting down in the break room. Within a minute, Catherine exited the building. Shortly after, the van left the parking lot. Then, roughly 3 hours later, the van returned and Catherine came back into the building through a side entrance. The movement matched the murder timeline. Police seized the van. And inside, they found physical evidence that lined up with what they'd seen on Michael's camera footage. Mud consistent with stepping into puddles, and clothing similar to what the suspect wore on camera. At that point, detectives weren't chasing a mystery anymore. They were building a case. Officers moved to arrest Catherine, but when they tried to locate her, she was gone. She had disappeared before police arrived. In her rush, she left behind something that suggested planning, packaging for a new phone, implying she intended to cut off her old contact trails and start fresh. Detectives traced the new phone information and discovered the number was linked through a family connection. They checked her sister's house, but Catherine wasn't there. Another dead end. Then police spoke with Catherine's current boyfriend. He described meeting her recently and hearing about conflict involving the child's father. He also revealed something that alarmed detectives. Catherine owned a gun and had shown it to him before. Even with that, they still didn't have her location. The case could have gone cold right there, except for one phone call. A friend contacted authorities and said Catherine was on her way to his place. What made him call police wasn't just fear, it was Catherine's warning. She had told him not to look into Michael's death. To him, that wasn't normal. That was a red flag too big to ignore. Police moved fast. They arrived at the location, secured the scene, and searched. Catherine was found inside. She was arrested without the dramatic outburst many people expect. But what officers noticed was something else, something that made the moment feel colder than shouting ever could. She showed almost no emotion, no visible panic, no remorse. No reaction that matched the weight of what the investigation had uncovered. After her arrest, detectives brought Catherine in for questioning. They asked simple timeline questions: first work hours, breaks, movements, because lies tend to collapse under routine details. Catherine claimed she never left the building that day. She insisted she didn't take a lunch break. But investigators already had surveillance footage showing her leaving and returning, and the van's movements tied to those moments. When detectives pressed her, she stayed detached, repeating denials, refusing to engage with the evidence. Finally, when asked if she even wanted to know who had been killed that day, she shut it down completely and demanded a lawyer. By then, it didn't matter. The case wasn't built on a confession. It was built on footage, timelines, vehicle records, physical evidence, and the logic of a plan unfolding in plain sight. Years later, on May 7, 2019, Catherine Sinkovich was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the custody issue, the question that haunted the story from the beginning, was resolved in court. Michael Ager was confirmed to be the child's father. After the conviction, Michael's family was granted custody, meaning the child would grow up connected to the father they lost, rather than the person convicted of taking him away. Michael Ager was 31 years old. According to those who knew him, he was a good man, someone trying to move forward, trying to do the right thing, trying to protect his future and his child's future. But on a December afternoon, seconds after pulling into his own garage, that future was stolen. And what makes this case so chilling isn't only the crime itself. It's the evidence of planning the way a borrowed vehicle. A quick trip and a few minutes on camera exposed a deadly plan from the start. A plan that might have stayed hidden if one neighbor hadn't noticed the white van speeding away, and if one camera hadn't captured the puddle steps that the killer couldn't erase. In the end, the footage didn't just record a crime scene. It revealed the truth. If this story moved you, remember, behind every headline is a real person, someone who laughed, loved, and had people waiting for them to come home. Thank you for watching. And if you want more real cases told clearly and respectfully, follow and subscribe because every story has a heartbeat.